Dominique watched Lynette sleep. In the 527 years that she had been a symbiont, she had not slept once. The lack of a need for sleep was considered a benefit to the Omjata in that they could work their slaves continuously without fear of death or exhaustion. A sacrifice of blood every now and again from the human cattle they herded or from the livestock that was tended was all that was required to maintain a stock of vam in any given keep, and the workload of any one man or woman was greatly doubled. It was an efficient system for a while, and during Dominique's nearly 300 years of bondage, she never thought that she would ever walk free again. Surprising, the turn of one's life. She was happy with the young woman from Abingdon, happier than she had ever been, and it appeared that all of Dominique's dark beauty and sickly disposition did not stay her consort's feelings. They had traversed the open intimacy of the nomadic African and suffered the barren quietude of the maiden's pregnancy, and returned to the other side of the world to find each other again, waiting. Lynette was open to her in body and soul. She loved the vampire, and for that, Lynette was an extraordinary person. She was the sun that never touched Dominique's cheeks, and the fullness of life that had been robbed from her. Simply put, in a heart that beat to the strings of a veiny puppet master, Lynette was a precious gift. Dominique began humming a little tune that she remembered her father singing to her on nights out in the desert. It was the only thing she had from those times. The Omjata had taken everything else. On many nights when she was harbored away in distant lands, made to endure harsh treatment by the cannibal angels, many years before she undertook the ritual of the black blood, she would hum this tune to calm her nerves and make her fall asleep. She did not remember the set of the face or the gauge of the eyes of her parents anymore. That had been lost eons ago. Dominique only knew this song, and as she hummed the little tune, she tried to pull from the locked vaults of consciousness the images of her mother or father or brothers. She even tried to recall the last time that she actually could remember what they had looked like and felt like, but even that proved impossible. Her mind, like her distant home and memories, were a valley of dust. Dominique hummed her tune by the soft glow of candlelight, spying the voluptuous curves of her paramour in delicate slumber, and hoped that she would cherish the beautiful gift before her for another 527 years, that one day, far into the unforeseeable future, she would not have to wonder what the young woman looked like, or smelled like, or even tasted like, that she would still be with her, naked in her bed, but the odd, unfamiliar creaks on the flooring above Dominique's head suspiciously tingled up her spine, that even her lofty dreams of hope were in jeopardy. Lynette, the blissful shade gently whispered, pressing her shoulders, "Wake up, someone is in the house." Lynette shook the sleep from her head, and rushing out of her bed, her thoughts turned immediately to William. Dominique went to the door as her companion dressed. She paused and listened for movement on the opposite side, but heard none. Quietly, she opened the wooden barrier and stepped lightly into the hall. Rounding a turn in the earthen corridor beneath the main house, the deathly woman found them as a blade of a cutlass swooshed past her face. She pushed her attacker back with both hands, narrowly removing them before another sword came crashing toward her. She turned again to avoid a jab at her middle, and a shot rang out. The musket ball caught Dominique hard in the shoulder. The explosive report of the pistol boomed in the corridor, and Lynette jumped. She looked around for some form of protection, anything that she could use to beat off the invaders, but nothing appeared so readily available in Dominique's chambers. She ran toward the door, her mind colliding with panic about her son and her lover. Though no sooner did she enter the hall did she have to double back. Two men carrying swords had broken through Dominique's defenses and were barreling down the hall towards her. Still sleepy, the raven-haired beauty nearly fell as she slammed the door shut to barricade herself within the round, windowless room. Lynette was trapped. The sudden rush of adrenaline from being hurtled into the middle of yet another intense plight so soon after waking made everything seem like some impossible dream. Her mind reeled, trying to pull the cobwebs from her thinking, but the feeding with Dominique earlier that night had been intense and left the poor girl exhausted from the loss of blood. Startled and dazed, Lynette grabbed an iron candelabra and tried to borrow the door with its wide base, decorative handle and long stem. The lit candles jostled in their holds as she moved it, and they fell onto the floor, splashing hot wax across her hands. It stung, but Lynette ignored it. Barely had she put the candelabra in place did the men reach the door. They tried the lever, but it would not open. So they beat against the door with their shoulders, and a curt scream bellowed from the other end of the hall where Sergeant De Silva, Wajajera, and 2 others tangled with the Bruxa. Lynette knocked the flaming wax off the other candelabra and swung it around just as the men broke through the thin blockade. She did not hesitate or think about what to do. Her son needed her. Dominique needed her. She was driven by the most primal urge of her core, that of a frightened mother to protect her young. Swinging the solid candlestick set with both hands, using all her might, Lynette bashed the first man that entered the room smack upside the head. The sharp decorative iron torch huge gashes along the left side of his rugged face. His port side eye was crushed and his jaw was severely knocked out of place. He went down in the pool of his own blood, crying in agony. The second man rushed her. Lynette tried to place the iron shield between them, but he grabbed the spires on the pattern end and pushed the base into her belly. Lynette stumbled backwards. Even if she had not been weakened from a lack of blood pumping through her system, she would not have been able to match the strength of the intruder. Her footing gave and she fell. The candelabra clanged on the stone tiles as Lynette's assailant raised his sword high above his head. Dominique twisted the head of the man that had lunged at her, snapping his neck at the base of the skull. His yelp was shorter than his thrust. The eyes of the 2 men in front of her followed their fallen comrade to the ground, and behind them Dominique spied Wajajera. The little vile native remained in the rear flanks while the others did the dirty work for him. An intense hatred boiled in the pit of the vampire's abdomen for his Indio's blood. She cursed him, and Sergeant De Silva shot her dead in the chest with a single pistol round. He quietly dropped the spent weapon to the floor and grabbed another from his thick leather belt. He fired again. This time he hit her in the pit of her hate. She should have gone down with the first shot, thought the sergeant at arms. Despite what he had been told about the Bruxa, he still expected some kind of reaction other than her defiantly standing on her own 2 feet fighting. It was amazing and horrific at the same time, and as De Silva's last shot punctured the beast's belly, his men moved in for the kill. The frightened fool slashed wildly, screaming in the heat of battle, and hacked Dominique's arm completely off. The cut was clean, and the limb fell to the ground next to the dead comrade. The veiny blood parasite wrangled its mutilated form out of the severed limb, seeking to reattach itself, but the sliced arm fell to the ground much too quickly as Dominique cried out. To the frightened men, hardened by battle among normal, regular soldiers, what they witnessed appeared unearthly and unnatural, terrifying. Dark red tentacles clawed the air from the stub of the Bruxa's shoulder and the cut end of the arm lying on the stone tiles. Neither man had ever seen anything like it in their lives. What rumors they had been told had not prepared them for such horror. Having no basis for understanding, the men stared with wild eyes, seeing the devil incarnate, evil inhabiting the shell of a woman. Everything they ever thought about life eroded in a few measly seconds and gave pause to their fight. Dominique, ignoring the pain, clutched a chortling laugh deep in the burrow of her throat. She bared her fangs, and the former stableman ran from the basement and out of the house screaming in terror. Sergeant Francisco De Silva and his companion crossed themselves and prayed to the Mother of Jesus. Dominique bent down and, picking up her fallen limb, reattached it to her body. The thirsty veins of the Jadra Sioux intertwined around themselves like old lovers, greeting after some fashion, and the vampire wiggled her fingers on the severed limb. She flexed them into a fist, ready to fight. Lynette kicked her assailant in the balls. The man's face twisted up like a lemon and he fell to his knees. Lynette scrambled to her feet and the discomfited attacker swung his cutlass aimlessly. The tip of the crudely sharp blade cut her nightdress and drew a thin red line across her abdomen. Instead of running from the room like she should have, Lynette swung her small feminine fist at the man. The brute was not so incapacitated as he was pissed off at being kicked in the family jewels. He grabbed Lynette by her wrist and flung her to the floor. She landed hard like an armload of logs. He rose with the hurt in his belly, cursing her, and kicked her in the ribs. It quieted her down all right. As he continued to curse her, he punched her in the face, splitting her lip, bruising her cheeks and blackening an eye. Then he picked up the beaten woman and threw her onto the bed. He told her that she wasn't going to enjoy any of what was going to follow, making it a point to tell her that he was going to like it though, that he would enjoy abusing her wretched flower so much that soon she would beg him to kill her. He promised her that. He promised Lynette that she would beg him to kill her at the end of her misery. The vile man tore Lynette's nightdress off in 2 long, violent tugs, ripping the flimsy garment away from her scared, naked flesh. He slapped her several times, letting the sting sink in as she screamed no. Laughing at her yelps, he unbuckled his belt. Dominique did not want her attackers to see how vulnerable the limb was, so she played the fear and gave it, and that gave her strength. The man who just lobbed the limb off her body slowly backed away. She was a demon witch. She was a Bruxa, a spawn from hell. What he witnessed had to be palpably false. Nothing on God's green earth could ever be like this. It had to be the work of the devil. Had to be. Prayers broke upon his lips as a cutlass in his hand seemed nothing more than a mere useless toy.
Thank you. Very good. I've got a few questions here for the panel, and then if anybody in the audience has questions, feel free to ask them. We'll start with Clyde, and we'll work our way across, since this is a question for the entire panel. Why don't you tell us a little bit, how did you begin as a writer, and what was your first published story?
Began as a writer sometime in junior high. Just kind of bored in class one day and started writing something on the side while I was supposed to be paying attention. But it's been a while since then. I've only been really working at it seriously for the last year. And the first thing I've had published anywhere was actually on a website called microhorror.com. And it's actually one of the stories that's in here. It's called Scorned. So I was pretty happy, even though it didn't pay anything at the time. I was pretty happy to get that out there. And then since then, it's just kind of picked up. I've got several stories out there in various anthologies. I have my own anthology, and I just put out a fantasy novel as well.
Eric?
Well, much the same way. I started off in junior high. I actually drifted more towards drawing and sketching, things like that. I didn't get back seriously into writing until my family and I had started a LARP group, for those of you who know what that is. And I had started writing character histories and racial backgrounds and plots and things, and that started writing fiction again. And sometime after that, even I had actually worked on my fiction for quite some time, and it just sat like pretty much anybody else, sat in folders and sat in binders and just kind of sat around. The first story I got published was sort of Twilight Zone episode after you drank way too much coffee. That was published originally supposed to be a magazine called Blood, Blade, and Thruster. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It actually went defunct several years ago. The thing about that was it was supposed to be a paper print magazine, but they made that one their last issue because it was dying out, and it was supposed to have a story by Stephen King's son, Joe, in it as well. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be in a magazine. My story's going to be in a book that Stephen King might read because his son's in it too. And well, when it didn't go paper, they didn't put that story in it. I made a whopping $10 for that one. But yeah, that was my first publishment.
Stavros.
I started writing song lyrics and poetry, and dabbled with short stories, but that didn't last. Basically it was just that. So I got published a poem here or there, and anthologies, online publications, and stuff like that. And I'd been trying until I wrote this last year. Up until that point, I've been trying for 20 years to write a novel, and I failed miserably for those 20 years. But I learned a lot, and eventually did it. There it is.
Very cool. I can really hear the lyrical content in your writing there, that's for sure. The big question for all three of you guys, why horror?
Why does everyone always ask that question? Horror is fun.
Yeah, a lot more fun than reality.
Well, of course.
Oh, I mean, same thing, why not romance then?
Well, horror, unlike writing in a lot of other genres, your romance, you're creating, but you're creating in a world that's already established. When I write horror, I am God. I not only create the characters, I create the entire world. I create the mythos, I create how the physics work. Pretty Woman's a great movie, that's fine and good, but when it all comes down to it, I want to create the whole world, not just the characters within it.
No,
I'm done, please.
That makes me want to ask you, why don't you write fantasy? Like
Oh, I do.
fantasy?
I do. I
Oh.
write other things. I'm not a, well, no writer's a one-trick pony. I mean, we all dabble in all kinds of different genres, but I'm most at home in horror, speculative fiction, dark fiction, dark fantasy, that kind of thing. So.
That's good. Good. I don't know what to add to that. I love horror because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would completely agree with
Well,
you.
there's fun too. Yeah.
It's, horror, fantasy, science fiction. You get to build it all up from the ground. And that's just a great feeling when you get it all to come together.
When you guys are putting together a book, different people write different ways. Do you go and do you map it out, or is it more of a stream of consciousness? Do you know where your beginning, middle, end is going to be, or is it anything's on the table? What's your process as you go through it all?
Oh, come on, I jumped on the last one. What do you guys have first?
I'll talk about process. I love process. I have to write in the mornings. I have to start in the mornings. If I try to start in the afternoons, no, it doesn't work. I also need a cup of tea, and if I don't have a cup of tea, then the writing just doesn't flow, and I don't really understand this, but I have to have a cup of tea. I don't necessarily have to drink the tea. I have to have the cup of tea.
I know a few people like that.
It's ridiculous. And then I usually write until about noon, and then I can take a break, and I might be able to get 2 or 3 hours afterwards, and then that's it. And I'll dream about stuff as I go to bed, like where I left off, where things are going, and I'll wake up and I'm with ideas and I can begin again. But that is how I write. Nothing else works. And I've tried everything else. I've tried to do the coffee house thing and on the bus, or notepads. I've tried so many different things. Like I said, 20 years trying to write it out, experimented, and nothing else works. And then from there on, it's editing, and I can do editing at any point in time with anything on, with a rock concert, I could edit a book.
Clyde, Eric?
Well, for me, it really depends on what actually I'm working on. The fantasy novel I did, I sat there, I planned that one out and put it together kind of step by step. A lot of the short stories, I have an idea and I run with it as far as I can for a day. If I get it done, great. If not, then I continue on it the next time. But I find that no real set way of doing things works for me. I sit there, look at the screen, and if it starts coming out, great. If not, I'll try to force it, see what comes. But the only thing I do, a little different from tea, either an energy drink or some alcohol will help definitely lubricate the situation.
Well, for me, I know a lot of authors they do plot outlines and things like that. And the word plot to me, it almost makes me cringe when I'm talking about fiction. I prefer the concept of story. I don't want to make a plot. What I like to do is I'll create a couple of characters, or I'll create a situation, and my characters tell me where it's going from there. This book is 620 pages, and I originally started with the concept was going to be a short story. And it just kept going because the characters kept going, hey, I got something else, and hey, we're going to go do this now. And I'm like, guys, we're at 100,000 words, and come on, no, we just kept going. And well, it's just they had more to talk about. Then again, I've had other stories. I thought this is going to be a novel, and it turned out to be 8,000 words. You never know. But as far as the process goes, coffee.
So there's always
Coffee. That's it. The coffee is the process. Without the coffee, it just does not happen. But unlike you, I actually prefer writing in a coffee shop or a diner late at night because number one, coffee's always coming. They always come fill my cup. I look down and there's coffee in it again. I don't know how it happens.
But the thing is, I like that. I love that environment. I just can't.
I like that environment because there's distraction without being a distraction.
Right.
It's almost like background noise.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But I've kind of find after finishing this thing, I can write pretty much anywhere now. This one taught me,
That's awesome.
write 10 minutes here because I got a break, or do this here, or, but that one here kind of broke me. But I still enjoy that atmosphere. But yeah, coffee, definitely. Without coffee, there is no writing process.
Very good.
I'd like to add one little thing to
go
the
right
process thing is, Some that I've noticed is, because I'm wrapping up my third book now, and I've noticed that once I get like 2 chapters in, I have to design something. I have to make a logo, I have to do a sketch of a character, I have to start working on the cover of the book, and that's something I didn't anticipate, but something I really like. So, and then that design aspect of making it visual, I put it up on the wall and then it turns.
It becomes real at that point.
Yeah, it becomes
Yeah.
real. Yeah.
First couple chapters are thinking about it. Now I've put this much time into it. It has to be real now.
Right.
So,
And then I'll get a couple ideas and I'll make notes like, and I don't really think it's like an outline, but it forms into an outline, because as I write, I'll go back to that document and I'll edit it and change it. And I like to see kind of like a progress report, I guess.
Yeah, and having plenty of blank journals just sitting
Yeah.
around for any idea that just pops in your
there's
head.
something to be said for picking up a pen and paper and
Oh,
actually doing
yeah.
it longhand once in a while.